Mark Segal. Mark Segal is a lawyer, originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's been an international legal consultant for more than 20 years. He has worked or resided in 50 countries. He has held senior positions in legal, judicial, and legislative reform processes. Mark Segal will talk to us about the 7 principles for making cities smarter. So, Mark, please come in.
Dear colleagues, making cities smarter is one of the fundamental challenges facing the human race. Our future and the future of our planet depend upon sustainable development, efficiently using limited resources, protecting our environment, and improving the lives of urban citizens, particularly now that half of the people in the world live in cities, and with that figure expected to rise to 70% in the coming decades. But it's really hard to know where to begin. There are so many possibilities, so many different interests to take into account, so many different challenges. How can we figure out what the right investments are, the right time frames, and what we really need to prioritize? What we need, and this is, I'd like to highlight also that this is a particularly grave problem in the megacities. 5, 10, 15, 20 million people. And then in the developing countries, where they're facing triple challenge from explosive population growth, rapid urbanization, and also migration, internal and international. What we need is a framework, a methodology, an approach that helps us to see the big picture so that our public officials and our policymakers, our civic leaders, and our business leaders can make the right decisions about what we need to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, with whom, and for whom. These are the objectives of 7 principles. It's a methodology, an approach, a framework that helps us to see the big picture. It helps us in a clear, precise, and organized manner to take a strategic approach so that we can clearly look at what the fundamental priorities are so that busy people can get the information that they really need and figure out what else they need to find and where else they need to go to find the information that they also need. The 7 principles approach was first applied to the field of legislative drafting. 7 principles for making legislation sound. It's been used in a number of different countries, in different regions of the world. And the objective is to improve the quality of laws, to make laws more practical, more sound, and more effective, so that people can take a strategic approach to improving legislative drafting and the quality of their laws, and also to improve the legislative drafting process. And it also serves as a vehicle for technical assistance, cooperation projects, and joint collaborative work. Now, we're applying the 7 principles methodology to making cities sound. We've identified 7 key principles, each of which needs to be applied, and each of which needs to be applied in a coordinated and integrated manner with each other. Each of the principles has indicators and measurement tools so that they can be used to see how well we're doing, what we need to do better. I'd like to now go through the 7 principles for making cities sound. First principle, smart cities begin with sound urban planning. The history of human cities shows us that smart cities are well designed. What does that mean? It means that we effectively use our public space, our public facilities, well organized. Personally, I like to think of the Roman cities. Incredible design, phenomenal engineering, and their public facilities The aqueducts, just perfect, the way they built them. Of course, there are many other examples throughout history. That's my particular favorite. What do we need in order to have sound urban planning? Well, good governance is a part of it. We need strong leadership. We need an institutional framework and strong institutions that function effectively. We need procedures, sound administrative procedures, and we also need expertise, human resources. Now, in order to have sound urban planning, we also need transparency, because people need to know, and businesses need to know, what the governments are doing. We need to have a technocratic approach, not a political approach. It can't be guided by special interests, and the decisions cannot be made in the back rooms. And it's also really important that we consider the information that's required for these processes. We need to know what the citizens need. We need information about what people do and how they do it. And all of these things need to fit into a participatory framework, because sound urban planning begins with and relies upon consultation and citizen participation. Second principle, which I'd like to discuss, is that smart cities improve the lives of citizens and meet their needs. Now, this sounds like a very lofty goal, and it is. This is our ultimate objective. Everything we do when we make cities sound is designed to improve the lives of you, us, businesses, consumers, citizens. Ultimate objectives are not achieved directly. They are achieved indirectly through a series of intermediate objectives. And it is those intermediate objectives which we need to focus on. What are they? For example, promoting economic growth, investment, creating jobs, making it easier for people to move around, transport and mobility. We need to think about different ways that we can minimize pollution and promote people's health. We need to think about the amenities, the things that people need in their lives, like parks and cultural activities. And finally, I like to mention tourism and personal exchanges, because after all, smart cities and all of our activities are geared towards exchanges between people and sharing. In order to achieve this second principle, we need to have a user-centered approach. We need to focus on the users of our smart cities. And there are four aspects of the user-centered approach that I'd like to go through. First of all, we need to start with a needs assessment. We need to look at what the people really need. We need to focus on what they do and how they do it, so that we can determine where they are now and where we want to be, and compare the difference. And it's that information that provides the basis for us to engage in the second step, which is policymaking, planning, and development. This has to be done professionally. It's a scientific exercise. We need to identify what the problems are, and we need to really look at the causes of those problems. Not symptoms, but get to the root causes. We need to look at the obstacles that stand in our way, and we need to figure out how those obstacles can be overcome. Third stage of this user-centered approach is implementation, the proper techniques through good governance and through transparent, open processes. Finally, we need monitoring and evaluation, because we always need to look at what we're doing and see how well it's working and see what it is. This process effectively, we can achieve our ultimate objective, which is to make the lives of citizens better and to meet their needs. The third principle is that smart cities require a sound legal framework. As a lawyer, I place great importance on this, but I think we can all realize that the legal framework sets the parameters for everything we do. It's the playing field. These are the rules that we operate by. And if there's any defect in any of these rules, be it from an international source, a protocol, convention, national laws, municipal laws, codes, procedures, the activities of professional groups, anywhere there's a defect, that's going to have problems for us. What are some of the things that are affected most by the legal framework? We have to consider the rules and procedures for using our public facilities. We have to consider taxation and payment of tributes. Public procurement and expenditure. What do we do with the public money? This is something that is very much affected by legal framework. We have to protect our intellectual property. There's rules for preservation of historical and cultural monuments and places of interest. And we also need to have the proper rules for information and information management, because the legal framework has to set the parameters for what kinds of information are collected and how it's used. As with all other areas of making cities smarter, the legal framework cannot be based purely on a top-down approach. We need to have participation from the governed. It needs to work through democratic and participatory processes, because this is the only way to make laws practical and effective. Also, with regard to the legal framework, it's really important for us to address corruption. Corruption undermines every aspect of making cities smarter. It distorts procurement and the application of market-based solutions. It undermines sound governance. It creates pollution and harms people's lives. So corruption must be addressed. And finally, I'd like to point out one of the mistakes we have about the legal framework. We seem to think that we pass a law, that's great. Now we'll move on to the next problem. Our laws are fine. Well, the situations change. Technology is very dynamic. And people and business leaders always have their lawyers and their accountants whose job is to find the problems in the laws. So we cannot just leave the laws as they are. This is a dynamic process. We need to look at how laws are really working in practice. We need to figure out ways to improve them. And we need to do this actively. Otherwise, we undermine every aspect of making cities smarter. Fourth principle is that smart cities use market-oriented solutions to meet urban challenges. The reason that making cities smarter is it's not a fad. It's not something that's just here for a short time. The reason that it's something that's sustainable and has continuity is because it's based on the marketplace, the same principles that guide our economy. And through the marketplace, we generate the savings, the profits, which then can be refueled. They can be turned into the research, the investment, the development, the technology. And this creates a dynamic process that moves us forward. But contrary to popular belief, markets do not arise magically in the absence of authority. We thought that the fall of the Soviet Union would lead to free market economies. That's not the case. Markets need to be nurtured. Markets need a structure and a framework, a legal framework, and an institutional framework, and people who know what their roles are in order to have a proper marketplace. There are a number of tools that we can use, and they're very important. We can apply cost-benefit analysis. Businesses can use business re-engineering and change management practices. Regulatory impact analysis enables us to look at the possible or probable consequences of laws before we pass them, rather than passing them and see what happens after that. We can look at profit incentives. We can look at ways to manage risk so the companies will make investments. We can look at strategic procurement, because public funds can be used to generate innovative kinds of technologies and in order to kind of tweak the market and create incentive for things to work better. And finally, there's a lot of funding, a lot of expertise that can be shared and that can be accessed in order to keep this process going. Only those cities which apply market-oriented solutions strategically will prosper in the future. Principle number 5 is that smart cities are energy efficient. Energy efficiency is the source of the profits. Okay, this is where we get our savings, and this is what keeps the process going, the continuity. Energy efficiency is also a yardstick that we can use to measure how well we're doing with many of our other initiatives. In this context, we like to look at transport and mobility to see how we can save time, money, and energy and reduce pollution. We look at energy networks, efficient use of energy in buildings, and the energy that goes into transport. We need to consider information and communication technology, because we need to generate the information that's required. For example, we need to know what consumers are doing, how they're spending their money, and how people are moving around. We need to know what businesses are doing. And finally, the information management, because we have to collect the information, we have to organize the information, we have to analyze the information, utilize it, disseminate it, and protect it, very importantly. And we have to consider open sources, because information has to not just flow from the citizens to the government, and not just from citizens to business, but people need to know information about what they do. So we look at energy networks, efficient use of energy in buildings, and the energy that goes into transport. We need to consider information communication technology, because we need to generate the information that's required. For example, we need to know what consumers are doing, how they're spending their money, and how people are moving around. We need to know what businesses are doing. And finally, the information management, because we have to collect the information, we have to organize the information, we have to analyze the information, utilize it, disseminate it, and protect it, very importantly. And we have to consider open sources, because information has to not just flow from the citizens to the government, and not just from citizens to business, but people need to know information about what they do, so they logic that a large proportion of the waste is going to be generated by cities, and it's going to be concentrated. We need to address that issue, and we need to integrate environmental protection into every single aspect of our work, because that's the only way to protect our planet. And ladies and gentlemen, we also have another obligation, which is to prevent something which appears to be happening right now around us as we speak. It's nothing less than the 6th great mass extinction of species in the history of our planet. The 7th principle is that smart cities are a consultative and participatory exercise. This is different from the other principles because it focuses on the way we do things. Processes built into all aspects of making cities smarter. Governance, public procurement, market-oriented solutions, legal framework, it's in there, but we have to look at the right process. Why? Only through sound processes can we achieve sound results. And furthermore, only through sound processes can we secure legitimacy. And we must secure legitimacy for all of our activities, because what we're doing is we're deciding how to spend public monies and where to invest. These are decisions that affect our lives, and they're made with our resources. And if they're made behind closed doors, if citizens don't trust the process, if businesses aren't involved, then it undermines everything that we do. So we want to see citizen participation and business participation in urban planning, in governance, in the legal framework. We want to see unions and business associations and academia and all kinds of other interests involved. And there's a particular role to play for civil society organizations. CSOs, or NGOs as we like to call them, are a key conduit between officials and citizens. They disseminate information. They engage in outreach. They can help mobilize. They can provide advice, information, recommendations concerning policy and practices and legal developments to government officials. They can play a very key role in implementing and managing and participating in different governmental and business initiatives. And finally, CSOs have an important role to play in monitoring and evaluation, because they can help us see what's working and what isn't working and what we need to do. In conclusion, I'd like to suggest that 7 Principles methodology is a sound approach that helps us take a strategic vision and apply it to the important work of making cities sound. We need to apply each principle individually, because each is important, and we need to apply them in a coordinated and a complementary fashion so that we can see the links and the connections in order to achieve better results for our work. In short, we need to apply the 7 Principles methodology for making cities smarter, and we need to work together in order to protect our common future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. It was a really enlightening talk, really amazing. Just a short question. In general, in TEDx and TED, the audience cannot place questions, but then the host can place a small question. Government meeting. Do you think that providing transparency, open data, so citizens can know how the budget is spent, and if they can transform the data, use the data, reuse the data, is really important for a smart city? What do you think about all that, open data and open government?
Saying that openness and transparency and governance processes that reveal themselves to the citizens are extremely important as a general principle. Because after all, the government is there to serve the interests of the people, and the only way that they can efficiently govern and effectively govern is by understanding what it is that the citizens really need and want, and that can only be determined through information exchange that goes both ways. But we have to be practical, because we're all busy. We have very busy lives, and supposedly information and communications technology, we're going to make our lives simpler, but we all know that we spend so much time answering emails and everything. We can go to sleep at night and our inbox is fine, and we wake up in the morning and it's full. And we say, I just had a few hours rest and already the work is piling up. So we need to take a strategic approach, and that can be done through very selective mechanisms. People need to know, first and foremost, about certain activities that they participate in, where they drive, how they're using electricity and other utilities in their own homes. And there's certain kinds of information that are more important. So yes, in general, open access to information is extremely important, particularly to know what government is doing, but it also has to be somehow organized and managed so that citizens can get what they really need and not spend a lot of time going through piles of information that it's nice to have open because it gives us a chance to check on government, but in our daily lives, we don't need that. Maybe the NGOs would like that kind of information.
Thank you very much. Please give an applause again. Thank you very much, Mark.